What is up, everyone? My name is Michael Pohl with Bay Area Aquatics, and today we're going to be taking a quick look at all of my fish tanks. So real quick before we get into the tour, I'm trying a slightly different video format today. So I'm only going to be in the front of the camera for a little bit, and the whole rest of the video is going to be voiceover because everyone says they want to see the tanks more. So I spent a lot of time on B-roll for this video, making it look really pretty, and I hope you guys enjoy it. So first up, we have a wide shot. This is my closet fish room, however you want to call it. A lot of people constantly ask me how big my fish room is. Most of my tanks are in my bedroom. I do have a couple out in the main living space, but the majority of them are actually in my closet. So let's go ahead and start off with the 75-gallon because the 75-gallon is personally my favorite aquarium. I've spent a lot of time and a lot of effort on this aquarium. So the stocking for this aquarium is pretty standard, nothing too crazy. The main fish that you're going to be seeing in this aquarium are platies. I started out with some red wag platies, and they're kind of straining in a little less true to red wag. So they're kind of mutt platies, but they started out as red wag platies. And I personally really like platies. They're my favorite. I think they're just great fish to have. They're not too big, they're not too small, they're really colorful, and they're really easy and super available. Along the bottom of the tank, I've got about 30 panda cories in this tank. Now, they don't all usually come out at once, but it's really cool to see a group of 10 to 12 of them just swimming across the front of the tank. They like to do that first thing in the morning when the lights kick on, and they tend to do it right after the lights kick off as well. They like to swim all up along the glass there, and it's really, really, really fun to watch. I also have a small school of rubby-nosed tetras. There's about 6 of them in here. I'd really like to up the numbers on this to like 20 or so of them, but I just haven't had an open quarantine tank or space or time to do it. And I got these right at the start of the corona outbreak, and so I just haven't had a chance to go to the store, and the handful of times that I have, they just haven't had them available when I had open tank space. There are also 2 Harlequin rasboras in this tank. They're kind of oddball fish that I've had left over from other projects way when I started at the beginning, and these are the last 2 that just haven't died off yet, and so they're just kind of chilling in the 75 because that's the best place for them. Now, my favorite fish that I own is also in the 75-gallon tank, and sometimes he's super out and super visible, sometimes he's not. He's very hiding and like all that good stuff, and that is my rainbow shark. He's one of my only fish that's actually named. His name's Kodak. I'm a photographer by trade, if you didn't know that, but he is absolutely my favorite fish. He's so much fun to watch. He's a good size. He's a little on the aggressive side for a community tank, but he does really well, and with so many fish in there, he does do a good job of kind of spreading around his aggression, so not one fish gets picked on all that much. And last but not least for livestock, I have cherry shrimp all over this tank. I started with about 20 of them in here and kind of never saw them, and then one day they just kind of exploded, and there's got to be a couple hundred cherry shrimp in this tank. I pull from it occasionally for orders, but most of the time, if you're ordering cherry shrimp from me on Our Fish Collective, it's coming from the shrimp tank that we'll go over later. As far as plants for the 75, the main plant in this tank is Pogostemon stellatus octopus. This is probably one of my favorite and most recommended beginner plants for anyone. It grows like a weed. You can start out with just a couple stems of it, and as it grows, you can cut it in half and replant the trimmings, and it'll keep growing and growing and growing, and it's very, very, very easy to propagate, and it's a very cheap and effective way to cover up a tank. That's the majority of the green in the 75. Now, while the Pogostemon is the main plant in the 75, I also have a couple other oddball stem plants that I just have for whatever reason, don't know the name of, but I also have quite a bit of Bacopa Carolina, something like that. I forget exactly how it's pronounced. This is another super easy green stem plant, and the thing I like about this one is it turns pink towards the top after a while, and so it adds just a little bit of different color into the green and breaks up some of the Pogostemon. In the bottom left corner of the tank, I have a very, very large Cryptwendetii plant that's been in the tank for about a year now. I got it when it was pretty big, and it keeps growing bigger and bigger, and I keep pulling from it, and it's just a really cool texture and a slightly different shade of green compared to most of the other plants. I also have a couple pieces of narrow-leaf Java fern just kind of tucked around the rocks and the wood, and a couple other places in the tank, as well as Java moss that's kind of crawling all up over the wood. And at the very top of my wood piece, I have an Anubias plant that's kind of covered in hair algae. I do my best to pull it off, but it just kind of takes over every week. But it's pretty and it still grows really well, so I have just kind of left it alone and just pull the hair algae off when I can. Now, the newest plant in this aquarium is my dwarf aquarium lily. Aquarium Co-op sent this to me about 2 months ago, and I maybe sat on it for about 2 or 3 weeks before I actually planted it. So this plant's maybe a month and a half old, and it's already huge. And I put it in a bad spot because I thought it was going to be a lot smaller, and so I put it in the front corner. If I had thought about it, I probably should have put it where the Crypt Wendeti was, but it's a really pretty plant, and it's really cool because it sends its leaves all the way up to the surface of the tank, and you get this cool like floating lily effect, and they're really cool to watch and really cool to see. And last but not least, as far as plant-wise in this aquarium, the carpeting plant is dwarf hairgrass. I got a mat of it off of eBay for a while, and it kind of died back, and it's slowly starting to regrow and fill in all the cracks, but I think it looks really, really good in the 75-gallon tank. As far as substrate and hardscape, I'm using black diamond blasting sand for the base substrate. Don't have any sort of dirt or anything like that below it. All I do is use Aquarium Co-op root tabs every couple of months, and that grows my plants just fine. I also have a very, very large piece of spiderwood. It's hard to see, but it takes up about half of the right-hand side of the tank. It's covered in plants, and it's a lot harder to see on video, but in person, it adds a lot of depth and a lot of character to the tank, and I get compliments on it all the time. I got that piece from Houston Manzanita. I've got a couple other pieces of wood. I don't think any of them are in the tank, but I've gotten several pieces from Adam over at Houston Manzanita, and highly recommend him. Adam gets some really good wood in and is really good at finding pieces that are going to look good in your setup. And then to top off the hardscape, I have dragonstone just kind of scattered around. There's probably about 50 to 60 pounds of dragonstone in the tank, just kind of at the base of the wood to kind of give it something that it's sticking out of so it doesn't look like the wood's just straight in the sand. As far as filtration, I am running an AquaClear 110. I used to have 2 of them. I just have 1 of them on the tank now. And then that's on the left-hand side of the tank. I have an Aquarium Co-op pre-sponge filter, the large type. And then I've got polyfill and ceramic media inside the actual filter itself. On the right-hand side of the tank, to keep the water from getting kind of dead there, I wanted to keep moving. I have an Aquarium Co-op large sponge filter with a Zis Airstone inside of it, and that's powered by a nano USB air pump. And that's nothing crazy for filtration, but it's mainly just to keep the water on that side of the tank from going stale and moving just a little bit. The heater's very hard to see in this tank, but for heat, I am running a Fluval E300. It's Fluval's 300-watt heater with the little LED electronic screen. I really, really like it, even though I can't really see it. And the very last piece of equipment that we've got is the Beamswork DA F-Spec light. That's what I'm using on top of it. I really like this light. I have another one of these. And I have them plugged into Wi-Fi timers because it makes scheduling and turning them on and off super easy. So now that we've taken care of the big 75-gallon tank, before we get to the little tanks on the bottom, I just want to go ahead and say that above the 75-gallon, I have storage. I keep a lot of the extra fish stuff up there. I also have a small storage thing outside that I keep a lot of the extra filters and stuff. But that's how I utilize the closet space a little more. And then off to the right-hand side is another new part of my fish room, if you want to call it that. And that's my Zis brine shrimp hatchery that Aquarium Co-op also sent out to me. And I know I'm going to mention Aquarium Co-op a lot. I shop there quite a bit. I am also a brand ambassador, so they do send me a lot of stuff for free. But I've been shopping there longer than I've been a brand ambassador, and I still buy a lot of stuff from Aquarium Co-op. So highly recommend them. But yes, just so everyone knows, I am a brand ambassador. And they sent me out this brine shrimp hatchery, and I had kind of gotten lazy about hatching brine shrimp, but I actually really like this, and I did the shelf based off of a recommendation from Well Done Tanks, and I absolutely love it. It's a great little brine shrimp station, and I just did a video on it if you're curious about the specifics. All right, so now we'll go down onto the bottom row of tanks. These are my 10-gallon breeding tanks. I have 4 of them. These are where I do the majority of my breeding and quarantining and things like that, just because they're low and they fit real nice under the 75. The first tank I'm going to show you is my Crebensis tank. I've got Crebensis cichlids in them. That's all that's in there. I have a little bit of hornwort. I used to be able to grow that stuff like crazy, and I can't grow it anymore for whatever reason. But I still really love that plant, so I haven't given up on it yet. And As far as hardscape, I have black gravel for a substrate, and then I just have a couple of the Aquarium Co-op coconut huts so that the Crebensis can breed. I used to have a male and a female and all the fry. The male killed off the female, and the fry are growing up. So I still have the male, I still have the fry. I'm selling the fry on Our Fish Collective, and once I get rid of all of the fry, I will be getting a new fish to breed in there. So if you're interested in it, let me know. You can find them on Our Fish Collective, and the sooner those disappear, the sooner we get a new fish. This tank is powered by a Lee's box filter with a nano USB air pump. All of these little breeding tanks are powered off of nano USB air pumps. And then I have an Eheim Jagger 50-watt aquarium heater heating the tank. Again, all 4 of these tanks have 50-watt Eheim Jagger heaters. And then it is lit by half of a Nicru LED light. I have 2 Nicru LED lights. 2 tanks share one, and then the other 2 tanks share the other. My next tank and my newest fish to the fish room is my shell dweller tank. Now, these are Neolampriagus multifasciatus, and I have horrible time saying that. They're known in the hobby as multis. They're super fun to watch. They're constantly going in and out of the shells. I haven't seen much breeding yet, but I've only had them for maybe a month or 2. I'm starting to see breeding behavior, and so I'm hoping they breed pretty soon, and I can start seeing the fry. As far as plants for this tank is full of guppy grass. I've noticed that they haven't touched it. They like playing around in it, and it grows really well, and it adds just that pop of green to a cichlid tank, and I'm a big fan of plants. As far as substrate and hardscape, I'm using a cichlid sand that I picked up at PetSmart. I don't remember what the brand of it was. I just picked up the cheapest stuff just to kind of keep the pH a little level because I know they can be a little finicky, and I didn't want to take a chance, and I was out of pool filter sand anyways. And then as far as hardscape, I'm using large escargot snail shells that I got off of Amazon. Most people use those. They're pretty much cheap and easy and the perfect size. This tank is also filtered by a Lee's box filter with a nano USB air pump powering it with a Zis Airstone inside of the box filter. And for lighting, this tank shares the Nicru LED light with the Crebensis tank. And the next tank on this rack, if you want to call it a rack, on my stand, whatever you want to call it, is my shrimp tank. Now, these are Neocardinia shrimp. They're cherry shrimp. They're just red. They're nothing fancy. I got them as just generic cherry shrimp, and I sell them as just generic cherry shrimp. I like to think they're pretty red. Most of these guys spent the summer out in the ponds, and some of them came from the 75-gallon, and some of them came from the 10-gallon Betta tank. So this tank is kind of my new breeding shrimp tank, and it's got a mixture of all of my different strains, and they look really, really good, especially after spending the summer out in the pond. Again, for the plants in this tank, it's covered in guppy grass. It's easy to grow. Shrimp really like it, and I like it. There's no fish in the tank, so the shrimp are able to breed and get around each other with just the guppy grass. As far as substrate, it's got just black aquarium gravel. I've been using the black gravel on the recommendation of Guppy Guru. I used to run bare bottom breeding tanks, but they constantly look dirty. And so he recommended trying just a small layer of black gravel, and I did that, and I really like it. So that's what I've been using as substrate in most of the breeding tanks, with the exception of the multis. And I have no hardscape in this tank for the shrimp. Now, this tank is actually filtered via one of the little dual Amazon sponge filters, powered by a nano USB air pump, because that's what's been in my shrimp tank for a long time, and I just kind of moved it over and didn't want to mess with the cycle and trying to get a new sponge heater or sponge filter in there. So that's just what it's running off of. And like the other tanks, it's got an Eheim Jagger 50-watt heater, and it has half of a Nicru LED light on top of it. The last tank that I have in this shelf system is my guppy tank. Now, guppies and me do not always mix. I have never had good luck with guppies, and I got originally a trio of these Hawaiian blue Moscow guppies. Not from Bentley Pasco, but I was told that the breeder that I got them from Bentley, and I trust that breeder. And so they're Bentley Pasco Hawaiian blue Moscow guppies. They're super, super pretty. The trio dropped fry and then died. And so I've been raising these fry up slowly for a couple of months. They're starting to get to the size where they color up, and I'm starting to see some color in them. There is a really cool, I was told it's a Siamese guppy in there, where it's basically the two Siamese twins, but in guppy form. And so he's got this big abnormally on his chest, and there's like a third eye on it and all that. It's really interesting to see up close. It's hard to get on camera. but it's been really fun to kind of see and watch him grow. As far as plants for this tank has Java moss, and I'm trying to grow lots of it, but the moss is always growing slow as usual. For substrate, I have a black gravel at the bottom of it, again, like my other breeding tanks, and a small piece of spider wood. Filtering this tank, I have a box filter with a nano USB air pump with a Zis air stone inside of the box filter. I like to replace the air stones in the Lee's box filters with the Zis ones because those ones don't clog and the Lee's ones do. Again, this one also has a 50 watt Eheim heater in it and shares the other half of the NICRU light with the shrimp tank. On to the last tank in my bedroom, that's my betta fish tank. Now this is a Nemo Koi Galaxy Plakat Betta, I think is the full name, that I got from Guppy Guru. He bred these and sent one out to me, and it's an absolutely stunning betta fish. I get compliments on him all the time. Super pretty, super attractive betta fish. I'm not a huge betta person, but I really do like this guy. I like the plakat because he's a lot more active. Of course, he wasn't active when I was filming him, but normally he's always swimming around the tank and all over the place. I also have some cherry shrimp in this tank. They were in here before he was, and so he's been kind of picking them off as he sees them, but I'm not actively trying to breed them out of that tank, but there are some cherry shrimp in that tank. As far as plants, this has a cryptwhin deadeye in the front left corner of the tank. The whole back of the tank is lined with Bacopa carolinia, however you say it, like I said before. And then I have narrow leaf Java fern and Boost Catherine on the hardscape. And then for a carpeting plant, it's microsword. As far as hardscape, I have dragonstone and a couple pieces of spiderwood just kind of stacked in a pile off to one side. And I'm using black diamond blasting sand as my substrate. This tank is filtered with an Aquarium Co-op nano sponge filter, and it's powered via a USB air pump, and there's a Zis air stone inside of the sponge filter. This tank also has an Eheim 50 watt heater. They're my favorite kind of budget heaters, so I run a lot of them. And this tank has its own NICRU LED light. I'm not the biggest fan of the NICRU lights, but I bought a bunch of them when I started out, so I haven't gotten rid of them because they still work. The next tank that we're moving on to is my Killifish tank. This tank is out in the hallway of my, coming out of my living room back into the kitchen and dining room area, so most of our guests see it when they walk by. It's just a little 10-gallon tank, but it's a very impressive 10-gallon tank in my opinion. The gardener eye killifish that are in it aren't the typical aquarium fish that most people see, so they get real bright, real colorful, and people walk by and they go, wow, what's that? And then when they look closer, they see the coolie loaches that are in the tank, and those are little warm looking things, and it's just a really fascinating tank for people that aren't fish people to look at, and it's a really cool tank in my opinion to do with just a little 10-gallon tank. As far as plants, I stick with pretty much the same plants because they all grow easy for me, and that's cryptwhin deadeye. I've also got some Bacopa carolina in there. I've got a bunch of Boost Wavy Leaf because I got a good deal on it and I like Boost plants. So a bunch of Boost Wavy Leaf. I have another Boost Catherine plant in here. That's probably my favorite Boost. And I also have some red Ligwigia that I got at a fish club auction. It used to be really red and I went to town on it a couple weeks ago and it's slowly recovering. I think I chopped too much of it. But it's slowly starting to grow back. Normally it's a lot more red and a lot thicker. As far as substrate, this is actually a dirted tank. So there's a layer of potting soil underneath the substrate cap, and it's just simple Miracle-Gro substrate organic potting soil, and it's capped with a mixture of pool filter sand and gravel. I wanted this tank to have a very natural look, which is part of the reason I let the algae kind of overgrow it all the time. At the time of filming, I really need to actually get in and clean it, but I'm not like super concerned if there's a little bit of dirt or algae in this tank because I think it actually looks really good. And I like to consider that thanks to the concrete background on the back of it. Now, I did this concrete background at the start of the year. I followed a tutorial by Tazawa's Tanks. So if you're interested in doing your own, it was relatively easy, a little bit of a learning curve, but relatively easy as far as a hobbyist standpoint, and I think the results of it looked absolutely amazing. I want to do this again with a bigger tank. I tried it on a 10-gallon just to try it, but I actually have a 29-gallon that's sitting at my office that I plan to be doing this width, which is why the 29 gallon at the office is still empty. So the concrete background, absolutely love it. Highly recommend it. As far as other hardscape, I have Ceru stone. It's mostly covered by the Boost Wavy Leaf, but it is in there. And then I have a piece or two of spider wood also in this tank, just to add some wood to the tank. This tank is filtered via a nano co-op sponge filter with a Zis Airstone inside of it and a nano USB air pump hanging off the side of it. For a heater, this one actually has an oddball heater for me, and it's a Cobalt something or another. I can't remember the exact name of it. I did a video on it a while back. I got it at a Fish Club auction for like a third of the retail price, and I'd been wanting to try one. I really like it. They're just super expensive, so I haven't bought any more. I think they're overpriced. But I do really like it. It's a nice heater, and it's a little Cobalt heater. The light I have on top of this tank is actually an Aquaneat light. That's the little like $10 light that a lot of starters like it. I wanted to see what the hype was about. I've actually been pretty pleased with it. It's super low profile. It's cheap. It works. And so far, I really like it. It's been on the tank for almost a year now, I guess. And it's been working really good. And now we are coming to my last tank. And I almost didn't show this tank because it's kind of in a state of disarray at the moment. But I figured, you know what? Most people are going to understand. I'm in pretty much keep the fish alive mode because I'm planning on redoing this tank completely, but I haven't had a chance to. So a little bit of background, this tank was at my office for a little while. It's my Goldfish tank. And when the pandemic hit, I brought it home because I wasn't at my office very often. And so it's been sitting in my front living room, and my family's kind of gotten attached to the Goldfish. And so he's going to be staying here, and I'll be doing a new tank, that 29 gallon I was talking about, at my office. But this is the 20-gallon long Goldfish tank. It's a fancy Goldfish. I think he's a double tail or something like that. I don't remember exactly what he is. He's finally starting to change colors. He's starting to get some white on his tail versus just the gold. He's still relatively small. He will be upgraded once he gets a little bit bigger into a bigger tank. And he shares the tank with a handful of white cloud minnows. I noticed he wasn't super active when he was in the tank by himself, and I know goldfish are social, so I added the white cloud minnows, and he got way more active, way more happy, and he's out and swimming all the time now. He did chase the white cloud minnows quite a bit at the start, but he quickly learned he wasn't going to be able to catch them, and so now they're just kind of his buddies, but he hangs around and swims with them all the time. It's really actually cool to watch. But back to the story of the tank, like I said, I'm planning on redoing the scape because when the Goldfish was here, I wasn't sure how long he was going to be here, so I didn't really reset up the tank, and I just kind of put sand and some plants and kept it on keep the fish alive mode, and it's been like that for a long time, so the algae's really bad in it, and now that I know he's going to stay here, I'm going to redo the tank. Again, I just haven't had the time, and I'm still not 100% sure what I want to do with it. What's currently in it is some water Sprite that's pretty much covered in algae. I'm probably going to pull all of that and toss it just because it's kind of a lost hope, and I have a guy that has plenty of that I can get more if I want. It's also got some narrow leaf Java fern over the hardscape, and then the two new plants that I just put in there a couple days ago are a Java fern and a dwarf Sagittaria plant. Those were sent via Aquarium Co-op. They sent them out to the brand ambassadors recently. And they sent them out with their Aquarium Co-op Easy Planters. So they're still in the pot that they came with, and it's a little fake rock. And I literally just sat the pot inside the fake rock and then sat it in the tank. And I figured that would be the best place to put those plants and the best place to kind of try it because the Goldfish likes to dig up plants anyways. And so I've been pretty happy with them so far. I'm going to try and incorporate them into the new Goldfish scape. I'm just not 100% sure what I want to do yet. As far as other hardscape, I have Dragonstone off to the side, and I have a piece of spiderwood that's made its rounds throughout a couple of my tanks, so some of you might recognize it. Yes, it's the same piece of spiderwood that was in the Betta tank before, and it's the same piece of spiderwood that was in the, I don't even know what other tank it's been in. It's been in several tanks. Filtering this tank, I have an AquaClear 50 and a Co-op sponge filter. I believe it's the large size in the corner. And I actually don't have a nano USB pump on this tank. I have one for it. It used to use a nano USB air pump, but I was playing around with a new Aquarium pump that's kind of down sitting off to the side just because there's not really a good place to hang this nano USB air pump. Even on the lights, it just doesn't work very well with the beams work lights. And so I was playing with the new Aquarium one. It's okay. It's not bad. I do prefer the nano USB air pumps, but I think this one's probably going to stay here just for this situation. It's better to have the one that can sit on the floor and be totally okay. As far as a heater, this one has a Fluval E200, the same type of heater that's in my 75 gallon. So if you don't know what it looks like, this is what it looks like, except this is the 200 watt version instead of the 300 watt version. As far as lighting on this tank, I have another Beamswork light. Like I said, I really like these lights, and so I bought one for the Goldfish tank because originally he was at the office and using office money and all that good stuff. An excuse to buy the lights that I like. So that's pretty much it as far as all of my aquariums. I do have some ponds outside. I have a 55 gallon rosy red minnow pond, and then I have a couple of 27 gallon breeding totes. One of them has Pearl Galaxy Medaka rice fish. Another one has orange Medaka rice fish. And then I have some rainbow shiners, rainbow shiner minnows in another one. And then the fourth one is actually sitting empty right now with no water or anything in it. But I've gone over those a bunch and didn't really feel like going over those in this video. This is going to focus mostly on the indoor tanks. So let me know in the comments down below which tank and fish are your favorite out of all the fish and tanks that I own. If you have any suggestions for any of the tanks, let me know, because I'm always looking for ways to improve them and make little changes, and I'm constantly messing with them. As I'm sure most of us are, we're making constant little changes here and there. If you're new to the channel, be sure to hit the subscribe button and hit the bell notification so you get notified every time I upload a video. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't, you know what to do. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.